Welcome to The Explainer. I am so pumped to have you here today because we're diving deep into the definitive edition of an absolute dark fantasy masterpiece, Last Love. We're not just doing a surface-level story recap today, no. We're going to completely deconstruct its wild, mind-bending rules of reality. We're talking a fundamentally broken world, the entities pulling the strings, and the absolutely impossible choices our protagonist has to make. So get ready because we're unpacking the metaphysics of truth, lies, and the ultimate cut. All right, let's jump right into this broken world. Right from the opening lines of the text, we get hit with this super visceral image. Rain fell at sunrise. It shouldn't have. I mean, gravity itself is literally reversing here. Black rain isn't just falling down, it's rising up in these thin threads, trying to escape the earth. Reality is just totally unraveling around our protagonist, Sarah, who's standing in a city where everyone else is just rushing by, pretending everything is completely normal. Now, to understand why the world feels so incredibly wrong, we've got to look at the architect quietly pulling the strings in the background. Enter the trickster. And look, the trickster isn't your standard, chaotic, smash-and-grab villain. Not at all. He's this perfect, untouched entity, just wearing a human shape. He adjusts things. He pulls little threads. He's literally guiding the collapse of reality itself. And he does it all through a well-practiced lie, shifting the weight of the world so subtly that humanity barely even notices they're losing their grip on reality. So that brings us to part one, a world built on lies, or the filtered reality. To really wrap our heads around what the trickster is up to, we have to lay down the foundational rules of this universe, where everything, and I mean everything, is held together by an artificial system. It brilliantly highlights the core conflict. Basically, the trickster runs what we'll call a filtered world. In this setup, pain is softened, right? It's dulled down. Absolute truth gets replaced by these comfortable little survival lies that just let people get through the day. It's totally controlled. But outside of that bubble, that's the honest world, and it is sharper, messier, completely wild, and honestly super dangerous. The trickster's lie is basically a protective shield, but man, it comes at a massive cost to the human soul. And because the world is running on those softened lies, it's actively cracking, and seeping through those cracks are these monstrous entities called the entity. Notice I said seeping. They don't just crash through the front door. They leak in through the tiny fractures of almosts. You know, things that never quite resolved. And what do they eat? They feed on the exact things humanity is willingly giving up just to survive in that filtered world. They literally consume love that dulls over time, pain that softly fades away, and that fading sense of meaning in everyday life. It is a total parasitic drain on the human condition. Which leads us to part two, the power of the almost, the dynamic between J and K. So this brings up a really fascinating question, right? With the entity leaking in and the trickster messing with everything, what is actually keeping this fragile, filtered reality from just totally shattering? Well, the answer lies in two strangers stationed across the veil of existence, J and K. They are perfect contrasts to one another. You've got J standing in the sunlight, light just tearing out of him, constantly moving. And then there's K, standing in the dark, containing it, holding it back, just waiting. And they are always exactly 3 paces apart. The crazy thing here is that their relationship is actually a structural pillar of the universe itself. There's this hungry, totally unfinished thread pulsing between them, and the text tells us something mind-blowing. Everything still exists precisely because they never kissed. Think about that. Their unresolved tension, their eternal almost, basically acts like a giant metaphysical battery. The trickster is literally using the sheer power of their unfulfilled connection to hold this broken world together. All right, let's move on to part 3. The blade of truth. One use, one cut. So this incredibly delicate, broken system finally gets a lethal weapon thrown into the mix, all thanks to K. You see, way before the world fully learned how to break, the trickster actually tried to unravel K. He tortured her mentally, showing her every possible version of J leaving her, every betrayal, every tragic ending. But instead of breaking, Kay just let all that pain burn through her until there was literally nothing left for the trickster to twist. She stared down all that pain and simply said, "I choose him anyway." By choosing the agonizing truth over a comfortable lie, she beat the trickster at his own game. And because she beat him, Kay forced the trickster to hand over something impossible, the ability to separate truth from lie, which takes the physical form of a blade. Now, this terrifying tool eventually finds its way into our protagonist, Sarah's hands. And it's absolutely crucial to understand how this thing works. It doesn't cut flesh. If you cut someone with it, it slices away the protective lie that lets them survive, forcing them to collapse under the crushing weight of absolute truth. Oh, and it only has one use, just one, irreversible cut. Let's jump to Chapter 8 and see how this all builds toward the climax. Jane knows exactly what's coming, so he goes to confront the trickster alone. But this isn't your standard boss fight. Actually, Jay purposefully lets himself get beaten down because he knows the trickster's real game is about choice, not death. By dropping his defenses, Jay reaches right past the trickster's lies, right past his hunger, and grabs something buried deep inside him, a forgotten physical manifestation of hope. Jay literally tears it right out of the trickster's chest, leaving the architect completely empty. That sets the stage for Part 4, The Impossible Choice, Sarah's Dilemma. Picture this. Sarah is standing in the reversing black rain, gripping this one-use blade of truth, while those Intini monsters are spreading and feeding faster than ever. We've got to ask ourselves the exact same haunting questions Sarah is asking right now. What is the actual cost of killing the architect of a world built entirely on lies? I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, right? Just take out the bad guy. But it is definitely not that simple. Because here's the horrifying realization Sarah comes to. The blade cuts everything tied to its target. And the trickster, he's tied to every single softened truth and survival lie in existence. If she uses that blade on him, the entire protective filter over the world shatters. Humanity has grown totally dependent on these softened lies, and without them, they probably wouldn't survive the raw, brutal, unfiltered truth. So she is trapped in the ultimate catch-22. If she destroys the trickster and shatters the filter, the raw truth might wipe out humanity. But on the flip side, if she does nothing and lets the lie keep going, the insanity are just going to keep spreading and consuming everyone's souls until there's literally nothing left to protect anyway. The tension in this moment is off the charts. The rain stops. Sarah is standing there between J and K. The trickster stops hiding, steps forward, and challenges her. "Be the truth," he whispers. Sarah raises the knife. She fully grasps that there is no winning here. There is no perfect, neat little victory. It all comes down to choosing what gets to survive. And then, in what has to be one of the most brilliant twists in the whole narrative, she doesn't strike the trickster. Nobody saw that coming. Instead, she turns, raises the blade, and violently slashes the metaphysical, empty space separating J and K. She actively makes the choice to end their eternal almost. The thread literally screams. Reality fractures, because that almost is finally over. J and K, for one single fleeting moment, touch completely. And all that intense light and overwhelming dark they've been holding back for an eternity, it just violently collides. They don't just balance each other out, they completely consume one another, absolutely shattering the old rules of reality. And then, just silence. Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, What Remains in Reality, a Broken System. So what exactly happens to a world when its giant metaphysical battery, that massive well of unresolved tension, is permanently destroyed? Well, the whole system breaks down. The trickster's still around, sure, but he's weakened and powerless now that his web of lies is gone. The protective filter covering humanity is shattered for good. The world didn't end, but it morphed into something else entirely. It's now super messy, sharp, honest, and yeah, highly dangerous. Some people break under the weight of this new reality, but others find a way to stand tall. And in a really beautiful touch, that corrupted black rain stops reversing. It just becomes normal, falling rain again. But for my money, the most beautiful symbol of this newly birthed reality is the yellow butterfly. Remember that physical piece of hope that Jay tore out of the trickster earlier? Well, it folded into a yellow butterfly, which Jay had given to Kay to help her carry the massive weight of the dark inside her. Whenever the burden got too heavy, the butterfly would come back to her. It wasn't just a symbol of hope. It was literal proof that something real existed in a world made of lies. And in this new, totally unfiltered world, we are left with this stunning final image. The yellow butterfly flutters away. And for the very first time, it doesn't come back. It doesn't return. Because Kay just doesn't need it to anymore. They don't need artificial hope or protective lies to survive. They are finally, truly living in the truth. Which leaves us with a deeply haunting final thought to wrap up this explainer. Sarah had to make an impossible choice. But think about your own reality for a second. If you were handed that one-use blade, what would you do? Would you choose to preserve the comfortable safety of a filtered lie? Or would you be brave enough to cut the thread and face the dangerous, messy, yet breathtakingly beautiful reality of the honest truth?